This is the tape number 1 of the videotape deposition of William Browder in the matter of the United States of America versus Prevoson Holdings Limited et al. We are now going on the record. The time is 9:35 a.m. Will counsel please state their appearances for the record?
This is Michael Kim and Lindsay Weiss from Cobre and Kim for the witness William Browder.
Paul Monteleone and Andrew Adams for the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office.
Seth Taub and Joyce Young Baker Botts for defendants.
Mark Simrod and Paul Levine for defendants.
Will the court reporter please swear the witness in?
Raise your hand. Do you swear the testimony, right here. Do you swear the testimony about today will be the truth, the whole truth, not but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Browder, my name is Mark Simrod. I represent the defendants in this action. You're here pursuant to subpoena?
Is that a question?
Yes. Are
Yes.
you here pursuant to subpoena?
Yes.
And a court order?
I think so.
Let me show you what I'll mark as Browder Exhibit 1.
Sorry, Mark, can I do the confidentiality?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped that. Yes.
All right, sorry about that. So this is Michael Kim. So we still do not have a confidentiality agreement or order from the court. I'm not faulting anybody. That's just objectively the situation we're in. It would be our preference to obviously have this deposition only when covered by a court-ordered confidentiality order. But given that we're under subpoena, we will proceed in the manner that I think plaintiff wishes. And as I understand it, and I discussed this with Mr. Simrod before the deposition began, there are other people listening in who believe he has identified 3 names, and I'll ask him to just state what his understanding is for the record. We on Mr. Browder's part, were made to understand that certain client representatives would be attending. I did not understand the word attending to mean unnamed persons or persons I can't verify who's listening in are listening in. That's fine. Given we're under subpoena, we're willing to proceed based on the understanding that the contents of this subpoena are covered by the same arrangements that was in the March 20th letter from us, which was subsequently agreed to by defendants, with the exception that the client representatives who will be identified as listening in would be allowed to access this deposition on the undertaking by all that the contents of the deposition will not be passed on to any other persons pending further order of the court. And I think after the deposition, we understand we'll try to get the confidentiality agreement finalized and submitted to Judge Grisey as soon as we're able to. So.
Right. I would just say that we've gotten as far in our discussions as a point where the judge has before him on the government confidentiality proposal the same issues. So they'll be resolved when he resolves them. In terms of people looking in, there are other attorneys and others associated with our law firm. Gabrielle Volstein is client representative. Natalia Veselnitskaya and Dennis Katsev are client representatives. And those are the ones I'm aware of.
Okay.
But anybody looking in will be subject to the same restriction that it cannot be used for any other purpose other than this lawsuit as we set forth in that letter.
Just one question. Are you able to verify who's actually listening and who's not to a degree of certainty?
I am not sitting here, no.
Okay. So we object to proceeding, but given we're under subpoena, we'll just note the objection and then proceed as we just discussed. So thank you. All right. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Proceed.
Exhibit 1. All right. So I'm marking for identification as Browder Exhibit 1, a letter dated December 4, 2012 to the New York County District Attorney's Office. I believe that Mr. Browder signed this. And attachments. let's get the court reporter initial it, I'm sorry. Why don't you use this copy, which has tabs. All right, Ms. Browder, can you tell us what that letter is?
Can I correct a statement that you made? Is that,
Yes, you
I mean,
can.
this is not a letter that I signed.
Who signed it?
This is signed by Brown Rudnick LLP.
Oh, you recognize that as the letter you authorized?
This was a letter that I authorized, yes. Yep.
Okay. And let me mark as Exhibit 2 the verified complaint. The original. The original. So how did it, while we're waiting for that, how did that letter come about, Mr. Browder?
This letter came about based on an investigation that we did into the proceeds of the Magnitsky crime.
And who is we?
My legal team and myself.
Who's your legal team, or who was your legal team at the time?
My legal team started out with John Moskow from Baker Hostetler. It included Neil Micklethwaite from Brown Rudnick, Jonathan Weiner from APCO, John Ashcroft from Ashcroft Associates, various Russian lawyers.
Brown Rudnick.
Brown Rudnick, Neil Micklethwaite I mentioned.
Okay. And who at Hermitage was working on this?
Pretty much Vadim Kleiner, Ivan Cherkasov,
And yourself?
and well, yeah,
You were working on it, right?
yeah.
So, you sent this letter to the U.S. Attorney, and what happened next? Or it actually went to the State District Attorney, correct?
So John Moskow introduced me to Adam Kaufman, who was head of the investigations division of the New York District Attorney's Office. I walked it into his office on the 4th of December 2012, or maybe possibly 1 or 2 days later, and then they took up the case.
John Moskow wasn't representing you at this time.
No, he wasn't, but he did introduce me to Adam Kaufman earlier.
When was that?
I can't recall exactly, but 1 or 2. I met Adam Kaufman through John Moskow at the Cambridge Crime Conference in Cambridge, England.
And when was that?
I can't recall exactly.
And John Moskow represented you for, what, 6 months in 2007 and 8, was it?
And then sort of informally afterwards, after we, after he got called onto another case and didn't have time for us.
Well, all right, we don't need to get into the subject, but isn't it true that you discharged John Moskow and Baker and Hostetler?
I wouldn't, no.
You stopped relying upon Baker and Hostetler's advice, correct?
Baker Hostetler, John Moskow stopped returning our phone calls because he got busy on another case.
And you stopped relying upon his advice?
No, not true.
Never, to
Okay.
this day?
Well, when he became adverse to us in this case, obviously his advice was no longer objective.
I see. And when was the last time before, what was it, be December or November of 2013 that you spoke to John Moskow?
I don't recall.
Years before that?
I think it was at the Cambridge Crime Conference that I last spoke to him.
Which was when?
I don't remember which year it was.
2012, 2011?
I'd have to.
No idea.
I'd have to look at the Cambridge Crime Conference schedule and see when he was there and Adam Kaufman was there.
So at the time of this letter, December 4, 2012, you walked into the New York County District Attorney's office. Is that what I understand?
That's correct.
With whom?
On my own.
I see. And you presented this letter?
Correct.
And what happened after that?
At that point, they accepted the letter.
And was there a conversation?
And then perhaps a few weeks later, I was informed that they were taking up the case.
In the New York County District Attorney's Office?
That's correct.
All right. And what happened in terms of the case after that?
I can't remember the name of the investigator, started to do some work on it, and then eventually decided that it was a real case.
And when did it get to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
After that,
When after that?
I don't recall.
How much work was done in the DA's office in New York?
I don't work in the DA's office.
How much work did they tell you they did?
They don't. I'm not a member of their staff. They don't. They don't tell me what they're doing or not doing.
After the first conversation, did you have additional conversations with the investigator?
I did.
How many?
I can't recall.
Did you record them?
No.
Did you take notes?
No.
So what were they about?
Just status reports.
What did he tell you about the status?
They were working on it.
Nothing more.
That it was a real case.
How long did conversations last?
I don't recall.
No idea. Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours,
No.
less than that?
Less than that.
15 minutes?
Perhaps. I don't recall.
How many of these conversations did you have?
Don't remember exactly.
All right, when did it go to the U.S. Attorney's Office approximately?
After the, sometime after we submitted this, but I can't remember the dates.
I see. How long before it was filed in federal court?
It was filed in federal court, I think, a year later or something, maybe in the fall of 2013.
It was filed in, I believe, November or December of 2013, so it's about a year later. So how long before the complaint was filed did you first have your conversation with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Quite a bit,
Months?
yes,
9 months?
perhaps.
So it was about 3 months in the DA's office and then 9 months in the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I don't know the timing.
All right. Who did you talk to in the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I spoke to Sharon Levin and Paul Monteleone.
Did you speak to Todd Hyman, the investigator?
He might have been present, but my first contact was with Sharon Levin.
All right. And what were your conversations with Sharon Levin?
That they had taken over the case from the New York DA's office.
Anything else?
That they were proceeding with the case.
They tell you that they were investigating?
They weren't sharing with me their internal conversations.
They ask you for more information?
Not at that meeting.
First meeting?
At the first meeting, it was just very simple meeting.
So you were there alone?
I don't remember if anyone was there with me or not.
I see. And there were 3 people on the side of the United States?
There were more than 3 people, but I don't know who else was there.
I see. There come a time when they... well,
Actually, let me correct that. Somebody from the New York DA's office was there as well.
I see. And who was that?
I don't remember the name of the person.
Was it an investigator or a lawyer?
I don't know.
They give you cards?
I don't remember.
How many meetings between the first meeting and the filing of the complaint did you have with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I can't say for certain, but I think there was maybe one more in-person meeting.
Other people from Hermitage or your lawyers meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office before the case was filed?
No.
So it was just you?
Yeah.
There come a time when they asked you for more information other than what's in this letter?
Yeah.
When was that?
Spring or summer of 2013. I can't remember exactly.
What did they ask you?
They asked. Well, they didn't ask me personally. They asked people on my team for more information.
Who did they ask?
Vadim Kleiner.
How did they get to meet people on your team? They weren't at the meetings.
I maybe introduced them on the phone. I don't recall.
So they asked Mr. Kleiner for more information?
Yes,
What more information?
I wasn't part of those conversations.
Did there files at Hermitage about what was given the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I'm sure that there are files.
But you haven't given to us in response to the subpoena, is that right?
I don't know.
Who's responsible for that?
And there's a whole team of people responsible for that.
Well, you're ultimately responsible for your subpoena to you, isn't it?
Subpoenas to me.
You supervising the production of documents?
I've got a whole team of people who's working on that, and they report to me from time to time.
I see. And have they reported to you that they provided us with files that you gave the U.S. Attorney's Office?
They've reported to me lots of stuff, but I don't know the details.
I see. So you have no idea what you gave the U.S. Attorney's Office, Hermitage gave the U.S. Attorney's Office in response to their request. Is that right?
Objection to form.
Yeah, I'll restate it. You have no idea what Mr. Kleiner gave to the U.S. Attorney's Office in response to their request. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he didn't tell you at the time?
He told me he was in conversations, but he didn't tell me specifically what he was providing.
Did he tell you what the substance of the conversations was?
Just backing up different parts of the complaint.
What parts of the complaint?
I don't know.
Did you see a draft of the complaint before it was filed?
I think we might have, but I can't remember for sure.
Did you tell the U.S. Attorney's Office that the allegations in the complaint were accurate as far as you knew?
I was never asked or never told.
Did you ever see anything that you saw you've read the complaint, correct?
I have.
And did you see anything that you felt was inaccurate?
No.
So as far as you're concerned, everything in the original complaint was accurate?
It seemed to me that it was accurate, but I should point out that there are parts of the complaint that I wasn't familiar with that I would not know about.
But the parts that you were familiar with, as far as you're concerned, is accurate.
The parts that I was familiar with I was thinking is accurate.
For instance, Mr. Magnitsky is an attorney. You think that's accurate?
He was my attorney.
He was your attorney,
Yeah.
acting as...
Acting in court, representing me.
I see. And he had a law degree in Russia?
I'm not aware that he did.
I see. And he had... he went to law school?
No.
He didn't go to law school, he didn't have a law degree, but he was your lawyer.
And he represented me in court.
I see.
I should say represented Hermitage Fund companies in court.
Okay. And he did other work. He gave you advice on taxes.
Correct.
And he was given a power of attorney to do certain things for certain of your companies, correct?
I believe so.
Right. So he acted not just as an attorney, he acted in other capacities.
Objection to form.
Do you know who drafted the complaint?
I would imagine that the U.S. attorney drafted the complaint.
And you have no idea what investigation the U.S. attorney did beyond the information that you and Mr. Kleiner gave to the U.S. attorney?
I don't work in the U.S. attorney's office.
Well, you're aware that Mr. Hyman says that's the investigation that was done. Took documents from your company, talked to you and Mr. Kleiner. So this case arises from your information.
Sorry,
That's news to you?
I don't understand the question.
You didn't understand when the complaint was being filed that it was based upon information that you and Mr. Kleiner provided to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yes.
You understood that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me show you the complaint we're talking about that I'll mark as Browder Exhibit 2, it's a verified complaint. It was filed on September 10, 2013. But, yeah. So, Exhibit 2 is the complaint we've been talking about, correct?
This?
Yes.
Yep.
And that's the complaint that you read and saw nothing inaccurate in it. Is that right?
Objection to the form.
You could answer.
So when I say objection to the form, that doesn't mean don't answer. It's just a legal objection. I'm stating to the form of the question.
Right. If we go back to what I said before, the parts of the complaint that I'm familiar with are accurate.
And we're talking about that complaint, Exhibit 2, right?
Correct.
All right. Now, going back to Exhibit 1, which is the letter to the DA's office, all right? If you take a look at tab 8.
Tab A.
8.
8.
Can you tell us what these documents are? Cover says bank transactions.
Yeah.
By the way, if you find some of them illegible, that's because that's the way it was produced to us. Yeah. So let me start with 3128-096. Can you tell me what that is?
Where is this?
It's the first document. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, it has numbers
Right.
on it.
I don't know.
Well, who put these documents together?
My team.
Who on your team?
My lawyers and Vadim Kleiner.
And which lawyers?
I've got a team of Russian lawyers. I think Neil Micklethwaite was involved as his people on his team.
Okay, so you have no idea what this says. It says refund decision. You have no idea what it is.
No.
And page 97-097, refund decision. You have no idea what that is.
No.
98, 99, going all the way through 102, have no idea what they are.
No.
So then you come to a document that's in Russian. Do you read Russian?
No.
Who do you rely upon for translations?
I have a team of people who are Russian nationals.
Working in Hermitage?
Yeah.
Where are they? In London?
Yeah.
Okay. So...
I should say working in Hermitage or external counsel from Russia.
Right. So you have no idea what this is?
No.
Is it a official Russian document?
I don't know.
Do you know how you obtained it?
No.
No idea.
No.
Do you know whether it's fake?
I would assume it's real.
But you have any idea whether it's fake?
I don't think that my team would have put together fake documents.
But you don't know.
I trust my team to put together real documents.
Do you know where they got them?
No,
You know whether they stole them?
I don't think my team, no, they didn't steal them.
Do you know whether they bribed somebody to get them?
They didn't bribe anybody to get them.
Sorry, objection to form. What's the them we're talking about? Is it
Say
3128, 103?
104, 105 as examples. You have any idea?
104.
Yeah.
Nobody bribed anybody. We haven't bribed anybody.
Well, Mr. Kleiner says he has contacts within Moscow. This is in your book. His contacts within Moscow, and then he shows up with some documents, right?
Objection
To
to
get
form.
central bank documents.
Objection to form.
How did he get them?
Objection to form.
How did he get them?
Could I have a moment to discuss with counsel whether or not there's a privilege objection
On whose behalf?
on the behalf of the U.S.?
I think we should step out because I'm wearing a microphone.
You're keeping track of the time, please.
The time is 10:01 a.m. We are coming off the record. The time is 10:03 a.m. We are back on the record.
Okay, so apologies for the break. Just on certain topics, we want to be prudent and just check if any party had a privilege objection. We understand that there is not, so you can proceed.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the question is, where did Mr. Kleiner get, for instance, documents 104 and 105?
I don't know.
Did he tell you at the time?
No.
Was there a reason he wouldn't tell you at the time?
He has lots of sources. I don't ask him.
He has lots of sources in Moscow that give him information.
Correct.
Is it legal under Russian law for him to have, for instance, the information on pages 104 and 105?
Objection to form.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the answer to that question.
Would it concern you if it weren't legal?
We try to obey the law in all situations.
Would it concern you if it weren't legal?
I'm sorry.
Would it concern you if it weren't legal to have, for instance, the documents on page 104 and 105?
Would it concern me? I don't understand. What are you saying?
Would it bother you? Would you bother you if you had documents that were illegal to have under Russian law?
Sure.
It would bother you. You wouldn't pass that along to the United States then?
If I was aware that it was violating Russian law, I wouldn't.
But you didn't ask Mr. Kleiner.
No.
So you were sort of closing your eyes to where he got the information. Is that what
Objection
you're
to form.
saying?
No.
So then why didn't you ask him?
I didn't.
You gave this information and similar information to law enforcement authorities in Switzerland, in Latvia, in Russia, in other locations, and you didn't check to see whether you had obtained the information legally.
No.
Is that your testimony?
No.
Was that a yes? I didn't hear you.
Objection to form. Question.
Could you ask the question again?
You didn't check whether it was legal, correct?
I didn't check if it was legal.
All right, let's go to page 111, same exhibit. What is this document?
I don't know.
You have no idea.
No.
You gave it to the U.S. Attorney.
Yes.
Did you explain it to the U.S. Attorney?
No.
What'd you tell the U.S. Attorney about this document?
Nothing.
Just delivered the letter and told them nothing.
Correct.
And you have no idea who created this document.
No.
Now, these documents that follow, this document, the ones that follow, supposedly trace money from the Russian treasury into various accounts. You know that, right?
Yep.
You don't know how the tracing was done?
No.
Who did it?
Vadim Kleiner and a team of lawyers who worked with him.
And they never told you how they did it?
No.
And they never told you what this document was?
No.
And they never told you how this document works?
No.
They tell you what these account numbers are, say in the fourth column to the left? From
No.
the left?
No.
No idea.
No idea.
So you yourself have no idea whether it's accurate that money was traced?
I relied on the professionalism of my team, who have been very professional over a long period of time in tracing money.
They had been very professional over a long period of time in tracing money. Before 2007?
Yeah.
What kind of money tracing did they do before 2007?
My firm was a shareholder activist in Russia, and so we were looking at situations involving fraud at big Russian companies that we invested in, like Gazprom, et cetera. And so the team that I worked with were involved in those investigations, those tracings, and various actions after that information was gathered.
You do know it would be illegal in Russia for you to be in possession of bank account information for accounts other than your own.
Objection to form.
You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
You have no idea that bank information was secret.
Objection to form.
I had no idea.
So anybody could go to Hermitage's bank in Russia and ask for copies of the account statements.
I'm sorry?
Did you believe that anybody off the street could walk into your bank in Russia and say, I want the bank statements for Hermitage?
Is there a question?
Yes.
What's the
Do you
question?
believe that's true?
No.
So there must be some law that says it's not true, right?
Yep.
That bank information is not open to the public.
Objection to form.
It's a sort of practice that bank information is not open to the public.
You have no idea whether it's a legal practice or based upon a law or not.
I'm not a lawyer.
So you have no idea about any law.
I've got ideas about certain laws.
And whether your information, your bank information, is secret within Russia, you have no idea about that law.
I don't know which countries have bank secrecy and which ones don't.
So as far as you knew that anybody could walk up to a bank in Russia and get account information.
No.
So then how did Mr. Kleiner and your team get what purports to be, or what has been represented to us to be, bank information on, for instance, page 111 of Exhibit 1?
I don't know.
And you have no idea whether it's legal or not.
I have no idea.
Do you know whether this document was created by a bank?
I don't know.
Was it created by somebody on your team?
I don't know.
Do you know what information it was based upon?
I don't know.
Do you know whether they had account statements?
I don't know.
Do you know whether they knew the daily balance in those accounts that are represented here?
I don't know.
So you have no idea whether, you have no idea how the money was traced.
I have a vague idea, but not a detailed idea.
All right, so what's your vague idea?
That the team gathered information from various sources and were able to connect the dots to trace the money.
Connect the dots. Does it take any amount of expertise to connect the dots?
Objection to form.
I think it takes analysis to connect the dots.
What's Mr. Kleiner's education?
PhD,
In what?
economics.
Is he the one who connected the dots?
He and a team of other people connected the dots.
Well, who specifically did he rely upon to connect the dots?
Various lawyers,
It was all lawyers?
and people who had experience in this type of lawyers with experience in this type of issue.
You didn't have any bankers, accountants, anybody of that background?
I don't know the background of lawyers before they were lawyers.
I see. And you can't tell me a list of people who worked on connecting the dots?
Their lawyers and Vadim.
No, the names. Names.
The
Do you
name-
have names?
Names of lawyers?
The names of the people who connected the dots.
Sure. We have Vladimir Postakov, he's a lawyer. Eduard Hardinov, a lawyer. Jonathan Weiner, a lawyer. Neil Micklethwaite, a lawyer. Olga Bischoff, a lawyer. Nathan Garrett, a lawyer. John Ashcroft, a lawyer. And then we also worked with various investigative reporters.
They connect the dots for you? Reporters connected these dots?
In some cases, reporters connected some dots.
I see. And you relied upon reporters to put together the information that's in Exhibit 1, particularly, say, page 111.
Objection to form.
Not on that page, no. I don't even know what that page says.
Well, it's right in front of you.
I know, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Did it mean anything to the U.S. Attorney's Office as far as you know?
I don't know.
So what reporters did you rely upon to connect the dots?
Bill Alpert at Barron's in New York.
Anybody else?
Roman Anin at Novaya Gazeta. I shouldn't say I relied on them. They worked with our team.
Anybody else?
The Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project.
Which you supported with substantial amount of money, correct?
No,
You never contributed any money to the OCC-RP?
zero,
Zero money.
zero.
All right. What other reporters did you rely upon to connect the dots?
Those were the principal reporters. If there were others, I don't know their names.
Anybody else help you connect the dots?
Yeah. We also subpoenaed, with the help of your colleague John Moscow, New York banks, Citibank and J.P. Morgan, in I think it was 2009, 2010, 2009.
Actually, it was somebody else who actually filed that pleading, correct?
Someone else filed the pleading, but Baker Hostetler came up with the idea and helped us prepare the original filings with the court.
Okay, that was relating to a prior fraud, correct?
No, it was relating to the overall fraud.
The overall fraud includes $230 million, but by your definition, 11 point something million dollars.
Objection to form.
No, $1 billion, I'm sorry. Or 1 billion rubles. What does it include? When you say the overall fraud, what are you referring
At
to?
the time, it was the criminal enterprise that perpetrated the $230 million fraud and other frauds.
All right. So going back to this, anybody else help you connect the dots?
So the yes, the Swiss Attorney General.
I see. Gave you information.
Correct.
I see. Pursuant to a subpoena, pursuant to a proceeding that you initiated in Switzerland, correct?
Correct.
And you gave that information to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yep.
All right. Was it legal for you to give it to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Objection to form.
I'm not a lawyer, but we asked for permission from the prosecutor at the time, and she gave it to us.
The prosecutor in Switzerland.
Correct.
And when was that?
Prior to filing this document.
Prior to
December.
December of 2012.
Correct.
So is there information in this document from Switzerland?
I would assume so.
But you don't know.
No.
I see. And you say she. Who are you referring to?
Miss Bino,
How do you spell that?
B-I-N-O.
All right. And what was her position?
She was prosecutor,
In what capacity? What was her
She was
title?
federal prosecutor. I don't know her title.
In what canton?
We met with her in Lausanne, so whatever canton Lausanne is in.
Mm-hmm. So the Swiss proceeding was a proceeding that you initiated, correct?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And we ever told that information that proceeding was to be maintained secret?
We asked her for permission. She gave it to us.
Were you ever told that information in that proceeding was by law secret?
Subsequently, when the new prosecutor took over, it became secret.
It became secret.
In other words,
Or
she gave us permission.
Written permission?
I don't know whether it was written or oral.
So you,
We asked
if
her.
it was written, there would be a document that you should have produced in response to the subpoena, right?
Objection to form.
I don't know.
And you've never seen a letter giving you permission?
I don't know whether there was a letter or not.
And you were never told that Swiss law requires the information in that proceeding to be secret?
No,
And you have a lawyer in Switzerland?
we do.
Who's your lawyer in Switzerland?
It's Lenz. The firm is Lenz Installing.
And you said there was a new prosecutor and it became secret. Who was the new prosecutor?
Le Mans.
So, as far as you know, you can't identify within Exhibit 1 any documents that came from the Swiss proceeding. Is that right?
I don't know what's in the exhibit.
Well, take a look.
Okay.
Sorry, just for the record, are you talking about Exhibit 1 to Exhibit 1 or the entire deposition Exhibit 1?
The entire deposition Exhibit 1.
The entire document.
Yes. Do you know what you obtained from Switzerland?
I believe there's a question pending.
I'll withdraw it. Do you know what you obtained from Switzerland?
No, not exactly.
So you wouldn't know if it were in here anyway, right?
No.
So why waste time?
It's your time to waste.
Don't want to waste it.
I don't blame you.
All right, so let's look at, we have a lot of lines and a lot of numbers, but they're all meaningless to you, right?
I don't know what's in these documents.
All right, let's take a look at page 113. Just a short sentence, top of the page.
Sure.
All right, so it has an account number from the Russian Treasury, correct?
Yep.
Do you know where that account number came from?
Nope.
Do you know whether it's legal to have it?
Nope. I don't know if it's legal to have it.
And then there's an account number for Ryland with Universal Savings Bank. Do you know where that account number came from?
Nope.
All right, let's go to, for instance, 121. Same exhibit, Exhibit 1. Do you know what this document is?
Nope.
Do you know where it was obtained?
No.
Do you know whose hand that is?
Nope.
Do you know whether it's legal for you to have it?
I don't know.
And you didn't ask.
No.
Mr. Kleiner get this document?
I don't know.
So let's take a look at the verified complaint. a look at paragraph 24. Is it 24? You've read that?
Just give me a chance to read it. Yep.
Okay. So it refers to a search of Hermitage's offices on June 4, 2007, correct?
Correct.
Is it your view that Russia had absolutely no basis for investigating Hermitage at that time?
Objection to form.
Yep. My view.
And no basis for investigating you?
Yep.
And no basis for investigating Mr. Magnitsky?
Yes.
And that it was solely a political investigation then?
Objection to form.
No, I think it was criminal and political.
Criminal in what sense?
It was designed to perpetrate a fraud.
In other words, this search, the sole reason for this search, in your view, was to perpetrate the $230 million fraud that's described in the complaint.
I said that it's political and fraudulent.
Okay, so the fraud is the $230 million fraud,
Correct.
and that the investigators went in with the intent of aiding that fraud.
I
Is
think
that your view?
Yes.
And what's the political angle of it?
I think that I was considered to be an enemy of the Russian state, and on the back of that, there was a sort of carte blanche for various arms of the FSB, the Interior Ministry, and criminal elements working with them to victimize me.
All right. So your companies, while operating in Russia, always paid all the taxes that were due.
That's correct.
That's correct? And even when a court found that there were additional taxes due, you always paid those taxes.
Yep.
And you, Hermitage, set up a company called Saturn in a region called Kalmykia, correct?
Yes.
And what was the business of Saturn?
Investments.
What does that mean?
Saturn invested.
Invested in what?
Stock market companies.
In other words, Hermitage Fund, let me ask it this way. Where is Kalmykia?
Kalmykia is a region in southern Russia.
Remote from Moscow.
Correct.
And what was the usefulness of investing funds in Kalmykia?
After the Soviet Union broke up, in order to promote regions of Russia, a law was passed which allowed regions to have their own tax regimes, similar to what happens with Delaware or Puerto Rico. And Kalmykia and about somewhere between 10 and 15 other regions set up their own tax incentives to attract companies to come there.
And so you set up Saturn in Kalmykia to invest in Russian stock market companies, right?
I didn't set it up. The Hermitage Fund set it up.
Well, you were the general director, right?
No, I was the investment advisor.
We have an exhibit on that. You were never the general director.
I was not the general director. I was not the general director of the Hermitage Fund.
No, you were the general director of Saturn.
I was in 2001.
And for how long?
I don't know.
So you were the general director of Saturn when it was set up, correct?
I'm not sure if I was the general director of Saturn when it was set up. I was
But
the general director of Saturn in 2001.
I see. And as general director, you were personally responsible for filing the tax returns, correct?
That's correct.
And personally responsible to make sure they were accurate.
That's correct.
And what Saturn was doing was taking stocks that you were investing from Moscow and holding those stocks, correct?
Saturn was an investment company holding shares in Russian stock market traded companies.
Did it have capital of its own?
I don't understand the question.
Did it have capital to buy stock? You need money to buy stock, right?
Correct.
The money came from Hermitage Fund, correct?
Correct.
And
Well, yeah, it came indirectly from the Hermitage Fund.
through a number of shell companies, right?
Objection
No.
to form.
No, through one Cyprus-based company.
So you created a company in Cyprus.
I didn't create it.
Hermitage created it.
The Hermitage Fund created a company in Cyprus.
And you're the investment advisor of Hermitage Fund.
No, I'm the investment advisor to HSBC Management Guernsey. HSBC Management Guernsey was the investment manager of the Hermitage Fund.
So you had no idea that Hermitage Fund was setting up a company in Cyprus?
No, I knew that.
Of course you did, right?
I knew that.
Yeah, you knew that.
I knew that.
You approved the structure.
I wasn't the one to approve it or disapprove it. The manager was the decision maker.
But you made the decision, or let's put it this way, you agreed with the decision.
I didn't object to the decision.
You knew it was happening.
I was aware of it.
And Cyprus, according to you, is a jurisdiction that often used for money laundering. That's your view, isn't it?
No.
You've never said that.
I think many jurisdictions are used for money laundering,
Cyprus being one,
Cyprus being one of many.
but you set up a corporation there, right?
Just about every Russian company set up, every Russian investor invested through Cyprus.
And not every Russian investor who invests through Cyprus is doing things illegally, right?
There are many legitimate investors in Cyprus.
All right. So Cyprus, this Cyprus company, which was what, Cone or Glendor?
I can't remember the names of the Cyprus companies.
Okay, was holding Saturn.
A Cyprus company was a shareholder in Saturn.
Right, and the funds for Saturn's investment came indirectly from the Hermitage Fund.
Correct.
Saturn didn't create any funds of its own,
It did through the appreciation of shares.
but in the initial purchase of shares, it needed to get money from the Hermitage Fund.
So the Hermitage Fund funded Saturn investments.
Right. And then Saturn purchased stock, or Hermitage Fund purchased stock and transferred it to Saturn.
Saturn purchased stock.
All right, and held it, and if there was an appreciation, it would go to the benefit of Saturn.
Yeah,
Fine. And then the taxes due on that were paid by Saturn,
correct.
and you were the general director,
In 2001,
and you had to sign the tax returns.
I did.
Fine. And the tax regimes that were set up in Kalmykia required the hiring of basically Afghan war veterans who had disabilities, right?
No.
What did it require?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, what were the tax regimes you were relying upon?
There were two tax incentives in Kalmykia, or there were two tax incentives that we relied on, or the Hermitage Fund relied on. The first was the Kalmykian tax regime, which allowed the companies to pay a lesser tax than in other regions, and the handicapped tax benefit, which allowed a reduction in the federal tax rate.
In other words, one was that a majority of your employees in Kalmykia had to be physically challenged persons.
The handicapped tax regime required that more than 50% of the employees qualify under certain rules of definition of handicapped individuals.
Right. And the other tax regime was that Saturn had to invest in the Kalmykian region, correct?
No.
What was the other tax regime?
That you had to be registered, you had to subscribe for a public offering, and then you had to make a regular payment to the Kalmykian authorities.
For the purpose of investing in the region?
No.
You just made a regular payment?
You make a regular payment on an annual basis. Or
For
could
what
have been a
purpose?
quarterly basis, I don't remember.
For what basis? For what purpose?
To maintain your tax status.
So you represented on the Saturn tax returns that a majority of your Kalmykian employees were physically challenged persons,
Objection to form.
correct?
Is that an exhibit, or you're asking just to recall?
I'm just asking to recall.
Yes.
To recall.
Good recall.
Good. And you listed those people as expert analyst division, working in the expert analyst division. Do you remember that?
No.
What did you list them as?
I didn't list them as anything.
Well, who did the listing then?
We contracted out the management of these companies to Firestone Duncan, an American law and accounting firm.
And you gave a power of attorney to Sergei Magnitsky to file the tax returns, right?
No.
Who did you give a power of attorney to?
Firestone, I don't know who I gave it to, but Sergei Magnitsky wasn't working on this at that time.
I see. He was working at Firestone Duncan, right?
He was, but not on this situation until 2002.
I see. So in 2001, he wasn't working on it, but in 2002 he was.
Yeah.
And he was the one who filed the tax returns?
No.
Who filed the tax returns?
Some other employees of Firestone Duncan.
When you say he was working on it, what was he doing?
When there was a challenge in the court over the tax payments, and so he represented us in court.
And he never had a power of attorney from you to do the tax returns?
Not in 2001. Not
How
that I'm
about
aware
in
of.
2002?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
2003?
I don't know.
How about in 1999?
I don't know.
Who came up with the idea that you could use this tax regime?
This was a common market practice. There was more than 15,000 companies registered in Kalmykia doing this, and this was, we were advised by Arthur Anderson, Firestone Duncan, Ernst & Young, and various other firms that this was a proper way of organizing our affairs.
But the courts in Kalmykia didn't agree with you, correct?
Objection to form.
They did and they didn't.
So let's have tab 59. All right, I'm marking as Browder Exhibit 3, a decision number 205, February 26, 2003, case number A22-1022/02/6/105. I'm handing you the English, and I think the Russian is attached on the back. So, have you seen this decision before?
No.
Are you informed of it?
No.
You see that on the second page, it says that in the middle that it names 3 employees were engaged for the position of expert analyst division. Did you see that?
Where's that?
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines down.
Yes, I see that.
You didn't use them as expert analysts, did you?
I wasn't managing the employees.
Who was managing the employees?
Firestone Duncan.
And who at Firestone Duncan was managing the employees?
I don't know.
You have no idea who was, you were the general director and you have no idea who was managing these employees?
That's correct.
And it wasn't Mr. Magnitsky?
It wasn't Mr. Magnitsky.
I see. And it said that if you go further down, that these 3 employees were disabled. They were working at other locations as physical laborers. You see that?
Where does it say that?
If you go down to in such circumstance, last full paragraph, I think.
Last
The
paragraph.
arbitration court finds that all economic activities of OOO, which is referring to Saturn, was carried out at its actual address, and the above specified persons, and it names 4 of them, bearing in mind their education and qualification.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding where you started. Could you
Yeah.
just point it out to me on this document?
Right here.
Okay. Okay.
Bakayev has no educational qualifications. Bayatkov is a worker. Batkiev is a machine engineer, had nothing to do with Saturn, and were only used by the claimant to get the income tax relief. Do you see that?
Yep.
And that's what the court found, right?
Yep.
And then, if you go to the last page, it's decided that there's additional tax due. Taxing authority had fined the company basically 903,000 rubles. There were arrears of 4.6 million rubles. There was penalty interest of 487,000 rubles, and additional payment of 252,000 rubles. And in the end, the court wiped out the fine and the additional payment, but said the arrears and penalty interest were due. Do you see that in the last paragraph?
Yep.
All right. Did you pay the taxes that were due?
I believe, and I this is long time ago, that there was an appeal.
All right. Let's go to the appeal. Let's see. 4. Okay. All right, I'm marking as Exhibit 4 a decision May 5th, 2003 of the Arbitration Court of the Republic of Kalmykia. Have you ever seen this before?
Nope.
You were informed of the result?
Nope.
Well, if you look to the end, the result is that the decision of the prior court of decision of February 26, 2003 was upheld. You see that?
Yep.
Did you pay this?
Objection to
Saturn
form.
pay this?
Not that I'm aware of.
You don't think these judges, there were 3 judges here, you don't think they were corrupt, do you?
I don't know anything about these judges.
You don't have any information that suggests they were politically motivated, do you?
I don't know anything about these judges.
Isn't it true you bankrupted Saturn rather than pay the taxes?
Objection to form.
No.
Saturn was put into bankruptcy, wasn't it?
Not that I'm aware of.
These taxes paid?
There was an audit done by the Federal Tax Service in 2003, which gave Saturn a clean audit.
On May 5th, 2003, the Arbitration Court of Kalmykia said there were additional taxes due. Does that
Yep.
override an audit?
Yep.
That's your view?
Yep.
Okay, let's look at the other company that you created in Kalmykia. By the way, did Saturn have income? Must have had income if it had taxes due.
I would imagine so.
The income removed from Russia?
I don't know. I would imagine so.
What do you have to do? What did you have to do, or what did Saturn have to do to remove its income from Russia?
I don't know.
Have to make representations to the taxing authority?
I don't know.
Did it have to make representations to the central bank?
I don't know.
By the way, the audit that you referred to, the federal audit 2003 of Saturn, you have a copy of that?
Not with me.
But you should have produced it to us as part of the subpoena.
Objection to form.
You didn't produce it to us as part of the subpoena. Will you produce it to us?
Objection to form.
If it's part of the subpoena, and I'm obliged to, then of course.
Then we can invite you back to ask you questions about it, because it should have been produced before today.
Objection to form. Actually, I'm not sure what I'm objecting to because that's not a question.
You're objecting to the fact that we're inviting them back. I'm sure. But we are. So, you set up another company, Dalnaya Step, D-A-L-N-A-Y-A Step, correct?
No.
Who set it up?
Hermitage Fund.
And that was through a Cyprus company?
Correct.
So the Cyprus company owned Dalnaya Step, correct?
It owned some share of capital in Delnaya Step.
And what was the business of Dalnaya Step?
Investments.
Again, from Hermitage funds. The funds to buy the investments came from the Hermitage fund, directly or indirectly.
Indirectly.
And Dalnaya Step purchased Russian stock, basically, right?
Yes.
And then when there was income, there were taxes due, correct?
Correct.
And you were the general director of Dalnaya Step?
In 2001.
Let's look at 121. And Mr. Ivan Chekasov, I didn't pronounce that correctly. How do you pronounce his name?
That's how you pronounced it correctly.
Oh, okay. He was the general director also at a certain period of time?
I'm not sure.
I'm marking as Exhibit 5, a Spark report for Danaya Step LLC. All right, as I refresh your recollection, you were the general director in 2002,
Yep.
and Mr. Chekasov was in 2004.
Just stop for a moment. We don't have a copy yet. Sorry. Thank you.
Is that true?
Is this, I don't know. I mean, I've
You
never
don't
had
know
a-
what that
I don't know what a
means?
Spark report is, but I was general director. If without confirmation from Ivan, could be not.
All right, and as general director, you had personal responsibility for the tax returns, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let me go back to Saturn a minute, because the court found that the employees who were listed as those with handicaps, in fact, did not work for the company or were not capable of doing the work that the tax returns said they were capable of doing. You remember that quote I gave you?
Yeah.
So who signed the tax returns that made those representations?
I did.
And those were incorrect representations, according
Yeah.
to the court.
No, but as I mentioned before, the ultimate decision was with the tax authorities, who gave a clean audit.
That tax court found there were incorrect representations on those tax returns, weren't there?
And then the subsequent plaintiff, the tax authorities, did an audit and found everything to be correct.
So you say, but you haven't given it to us. But according to the court, there were incorrect representations. That's right, and that's where we leave it in terms of the documents we have here today, right?
Well, I'm sorry, what's the question?
The question is that the court found there were improper representations about the employees of Saturn on the tax returns.
Right, you showed me those documents.
Yes. And do you have any information that would suggest those employees were capable of being analysts for Saturn?
I have an audit from the tax authorities of Kalmykia giving a clean audit, giving a clean bill of health to both companies in late 2003.
After the court decided otherwise?
That's correct.
All right. And you're going to produce that to us?
Sure.
Section 4.
Okay. So let's go to Denalia Step. There's a decision, December 9, 2005, which I've marked as what, Exhibit 4? 5? No, that's... Have I marked it yet? Oh, I haven't marked it yet. Let's give you that. Have you seen this decision before? It's December 9, 2005, Arbitration Court of the Republic of Kalmykia, and it's case number A22-1398-05-13-172. I'm sure you can read this stuff later.
What's the question?
Have you seen this before?
No.
Were you informed of it?
No.
So this is the first time you're aware that the Arbitration Court of Kalmykia found unpaid taxes in the amount of 551 million rubles.
What's the question?
Is this the first time that you've learned that the Kalmykian Arbitration Court found unpaid taxes for Dahlia Step of 551 million rubles?
Yes.
That's almost, what, $20 million?
I don't have my calculator. Sounds.
Take my word for it.
Okay.
I checked the exchange rate and used my calculator. It's 19 million and something. All right, and isn't it true that after this decision, Hermitage bankrupted Dahlia Step?
No.
Okay, let's look at tab 63. Have you ever seen this opinion before? This is Arbitration Court of the Republic of Kalmykia, June 9, 2007. It's entitled Judgment, Case Number A 22-941-06-15-133. It is a bankruptcy judgment for Dahlia Step. Do you see that?
I'm sorry, where are you reading from?
I'm just reading from the title. It's
Yep.
a decree in bankruptcy proceedings. Says at the end, ordered in the judge, Dahlia Step shall be considered an absent debtor. The absent debtor, Dahlia Step, shall be declared insolvent. It's a trustee appointed. The information's to be published. The Federal Tax Service shall be compensated for, shall compensate the trustee. You see that? 3 judges.
Where's that?
The last 2 pages.
Yep.
All right? So Dahlia Step is put into bankruptcy. Judgment is entered. You see that? That's news to you?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yep.
All right. Did you know that the tax authority was the only creditor of Dahlia Step?
I wasn't aware of this judgment, so I didn't know that.
And you were, how did this, let me ask you another question. You aware of an appeal of this judgment?
No.
Well, let's show you that. Tab 64. All right, I put in front of you Exhibit 8, which is a decree, October 22nd, 2007. Same case number for Dahlia Step. The report of the bankruptcy trustee is affirmed. Bankruptcy proceeding against absent debtor Dahlia Step shall be concluded. It goes on to describe various steps there. But on the first page, last two sentences, the court found that the UFNS of Russia for the Republic of Kalmykia was the only creditor. Do you see that?
I do.
So in other words, there are taxes due. Is that the way you would understand that?
Yep.
And you were totally unaware of these events. You weren't aware of this decree, aware of the appeal, aware of the fact that Dahlia Step was placed in bankruptcy and that taxes were owed.
Totally unaware.
How would that happen within Hermitage?
Objection to form.
I don't understand your question.
How could it happen that one of your companies is placed in bankruptcy and has taxes due and you don't even know about it?
Objection to form.
This wasn't one of our companies at that point.
Whose company was it?
We had transferred this company to be liquidated in 2004.
Without paying the taxes, apparently.
No, we paid the taxes and had it confirmed
Confirmed by what?
by the person we transferred the companies to.
Who did you transfer the companies to?
We transferred it to a firm called VMRG,
What's VMRG?
Visao Risk Management Group.
Lizao, how do you spell that?
VISAO.
And who runs that group?
It's run by a man named Jakir Shashua.
Where is he?
I don't know.
Well, where's his company located?
Moscow.
And how did you transfer the companies?
We re-registered his corporate name or his personal name or something.
Was there compensation paid?
I don't know the details. It wasn't my responsibility.
Whose responsibility was it?
The manager of the fund, HSBC.
HSBC Guernsey.
Yeah.
And it was transferred, you said, to be liquidated?
Correct.
And I think I asked you, was there compensation paid?
I don't know the details.
In any case, you know a man named Ariel Busaka?
No.
Busada?
No.
Isn't that a name you use in Red Notice?
Yeah.
So you know who that is.
Yeah.
So who is it?
That's Jakir Shashua.
How do you spell his name, Joshua?
I don't know.
So as of October of 2007, there are taxes due. Just a second. When did you make the transfer?
Objection to form.
I didn't make any transfer.
To Mr. Shashua.
I didn't make any transfer.
When did Hermitage transfer Dahlia Step to Mr. Shashua?
Sometime in 2004.
Okay. In 2000, thereafter, Do you know whether Diastep had any business?
I don't know.
Why do you use a pseudonym for Mr. Sashua in your book?
I used pseudonyms for a lot of people.
Why did you use a pseudonym for him?
I don't recall.
Is he in danger in some way?
I don't know.
Do you know what for what tax years this $20 million is due?
No.
Do you know whether it's when you held the company?
I'm sorry?
Do you know whether it was due for time periods when you owned or Hermitage Fund owned the company?
I don't know.
Well, if you look at the decision in number 6,
In Exhibit 6?
yes, Exhibit 6,
Yeah.
says that as of May 3rd, 2005, it was suggested that Diastep voluntarily pay the taxes sanctioned in the amount of 91 million rubles. So that would have been for a prior tax year, wouldn't it?
I'm not an accountant, I don't know.
Well, you don't have a decision in 2005 for the tax year 2005, do you? You have to file the tax for 2005 at the end of 2005. So we're talking about prior tax years when Hermitage Fund owned this company.
Objection to
There were
form.
taxes found to be due by this court. And that's news to you.
Yes.
And the company ultimately is bankrupt without paying the taxes. That's what happened, isn't it?
I don't know.
So at the time that the search warrant was executed in June of 2007, the situation was that courts had found that you had taken advantage of the tax regime in Kalmykia. You had taxes due. They were unpaid. The company was bankrupt. You say that's not a grounds to conduct an investigation?
Objection.
So you're break it down into smaller pieces because I don't know what you're trying to say here.
What I'm trying to say is, you've said that the investigative authorities had absolutely no basis for conducting an investigation of Hermitage Fund in 2007.
Objection to form.
And what these decisions show is there were false statements on tax returns, there were taxes due, they went unpaid, and the company was placed in bankruptcy.
Objection to form and the characterization of the document.
Wouldn't you agree that that would be a basis for the investigative authorities to investigate whether there had been any wrongdoing?
In 2006, after I was expelled from the country, we wrote to the Interior Ministry and Federal Border Service of Russia to inquire about whether there was any criminal investigations open into me in relation to any activities in the Federation of Russia, in order to determine whether my expulsion from Russia was due to any criminal investigations. And we were informed that there were no criminal investigations inside the Russian Federation
At that time?
in 2006.
And you're sure they would have told you?
Yep.
You have that letter?
I have that letter.
You haven't given us that letter. I'll tell you haven't given us that letter. So we have to take your word for it. Is that the idea?
Well, in due course, I'm sure that when we get to producing, I think we've produced about 500,000 documents for you so far, so I can't tell you what we have and haven't produced yet.
So, if the facts are as the way I described them, would you dispute that the Ministry of Interior had grounds to investigate Hermitage Fund for tax evasion?
Yes, because the facts, how you've presented them, aren't correct. There was no investigation open into me in 2006, and subsequent to that, and we've learned this recently, that that the investigation, there had been an investigation in 2004 that was closed that had looked into Del Nye Step and had been closed due to lack of crime. So,
You have that document?
yep,
You going to give us that document?
of course.
By the way, Saturn became Parfenian?
I don't know.
Let's take about a 15-minute break.
Sure.
Time is 11:10 a.m. We are coming up